Welcome to TechKrunch at Komprise. I'm Randy Hopkins. This is where we take topics and questions and demonstrate a functionality or a use case that our customers want to know about. We call it TechKrunch because we take a technical approach at it, and we show you how it's done. Try to do a demo with every topic. Today, we're going to be focusing on our integration and use cases and functionality with Nutanix. So I personally love Nutanix. They really revolutionized the hyper-converged space with simplicity and performance. So they're a great organization. So today we are going to be focusing on our integration with Komprise. So let's go ahead and get started. But before we jump into the demo, I do suggest that you look at that little gear icon on the bottom right-hand side of your screen, and if you mouse over it and click on it, you can adjust your parameters so that you can have a better viewing experience. Yeah, today I'm joined by Steve Moore, our Senior Engineer of Alliances. So we want to say thank you, Steve, for joining us. And we are going to be focusing on a number of use cases like migration and data tiering and copying from Nutanix to a cloud. So let's go ahead and see what Steve and Randy look like this morning and say hello to those folks so you know who's on the other end of this thing. And have a cup of coffee with us.
Cup of tea, yeah.
Hey, Steve, thanks for putting this together with us today, and looking forward to a good demo.
Glad to be here. Looking forward to this myself.
Yeah, like I said, we are going to be focusing on migration and data tiering and Komprise integration with Nutanix. So one of the areas where we can help Nutanix Files customers is data migration. Architecturally, our approach is a highly parallelized multi-processing design designed to migrate petabytes of data and billions of files. And what would normally take 26 days, 25 days with rsync can be done in a single day with Komprise. We've designed it with multi-parallelism in place and also a protocol level optimization. So what that means is we actually break the tasks into a bunch of different data movers, if you will, and assign those to different observers. And by doing so, we're achieving a lot of performance benefits of doing that, as well as from a protocol level optimization perspective. So we're able to take data from legacy storage systems, migrate that over to Nutanix Files. And you're going to see how we do that. Also, Komprise helps Nutanix Files customers with tiering. So if we are able to take cold data, stale data, or any data based on the parameters that you choose and tier those files to third-party storage, S3 storage, object storage, and cloud storage. And we're able to do that transparently without access impact to the applications. And when we put it into the destination, that cold data or those files into the destination, you're also able to access those files in its native format as well, even if it is in an object store, for example. So the benefit of this is clear off that cold data and improve storage efficiency by up to 70%, because we see that about 70 to 75% of data on Files platforms are cold. Now I'll pass it over to Steve, and he'll explain what our architecture looks like, where we fit within the Nutanix ecosystem, and then he'll jump right into the UI and show what we look like.
Thank you, Randy. We've been working with Nutanix for this year to cooperation between our engineering groups to help bring our two product families together. And I think there's a great opportunity to really help expand what happens in the Nutanix environment. With their hyper-converged infrastructure, they have a really great way of bringing everything together and unifying that into one environment. And what we're going to see here is that we're able to now bring Komprise into that environment and run it in that as well with what we're doing with the observers and the proxies. So I'll show you what that looks like briefly. And then the ability to get data loaded into it. It's enough to stand up that infrastructure, but that infrastructure, with all that compute power, needs data to crunch on. And that's where the migration comes in that Randy was talking about. And with our ability to connect to anything with an NFS or SMB interface and be able to move data into Nutanix Files helps to bring that together. But that really starts even before we do the movement with understanding the environment and doing a bit of assessment. So we'll show you what that looks like too. And then once it's into Files, once customers stop accessing stuff for 30, 60 days, odds of them coming back to it again are fairly minimal. And as Randy mentioned, we have that ability to do that tiering off to the target side of things. But yet we leave behind a symbolic link or a shortcut. Everybody knows what a shortcut is in Windows. So, that gives you that link to that data, even though it might be sitting in the cloud or on another platform. But the other part about Komprise that's really cool is you can still access and read that data in that native format on those devices. So I'll show you a little bit about what a plan looks like as well. So we'll walk through those items in the demonstration here. Randy, you want to go to the next slide and I'll take over?
Sure. And if anybody has any questions, there's a little question mark on the right-hand side of your screen where you can click on that and ask us a question. Okay.
Yeah, so what I'm showing here is our director interface, which is really just an admin console. It doesn't, no data really flows through it or anything like that. It's just presenting the data, the summary information that we collect, and it's where you set your policies and plans in place. And to get this environment set up, it's as simple as just getting our observers and our proxies in place. And as I mentioned today, you know, Nutanix provides that virtual environment with their Acropolis environment and whatnot. And we can certainly deploy our observers and proxies in that space to have an integrated, unified solution for that. And our observers are Linux machines. So we can provide, we have a set of procedures to kind of go through for that, for Nutanix. We have a particular Linux kernel that we run in that environment. And this is a kernel where we've gone through the packages and we've checked them out and we've certified it. And we run security checks against it and everything too. So this is the platform for the observers. So we have this specific kernel that we'll go and apply in the environment. And that looks a bit like this. Now, I'm kind of cheating today. I'm kind of using my VMware environment to do that, but same basic procedures and steps. So just boot the Linux kernel that's in there, boot the environment, start to set it up. You'll answer some questions about keyboard support and stuff. An interesting note along the way is selecting the destination drive that you're going to load it on, but also in setting up the network interface for it too. So you want to come in here and turn that on and specify your network parameters, and that'll just make it easier when you go to set up the observer for the environment. So once that's done, you can continue on with the installation of the environment. So it's pretty straightforward from there. Standard Linux install. Once that's in place, then the next thing we'll want to do is download the observer. And you can get that from your Komprise Systems Engineer, the observer code itself. And then you'll go in and you'll get that as a zip file. You'll decompress it into the systems, go down to the Komprise observer directory and install the Komprise shell. Once that shell runs, it installs all the items into our directories that we're looking for that you can then come along and log in as comp user and password and then run the word setup. And you'll see that it runs the standard setups that we see in all of our virtual environments, asking about the network information and settings and configurings. And you see there, because we've already set it up with the kernel setup, all that data is in there. So you should just be able to say, no, I don't need to change that, go around that, and then put in the information for the login to the director and everything from there. So getting us set up into the Nutanix environment is straightforward. It's not complicated. It's easy to set up and do with a little preparation for the network information and downloading the ISO version that we're going to run on. The observers are easy to set up in the environment. And the Windows proxies, again, you know, we ask the customers for standard Windows servers that we'll put our services onto. So deploying a Windows server in Nutanix is easy, and our services connect in, and all the procedures stay the same. So running Komprise in a Nutanix environment is easy to do and easy to set up, and that keeps everything contained in that one environment, which is one of the great advantages of Nutanix. Now, once it's in there, you'll want to be able to mount your storage subsystems. So you can come in here to Shares and identify the servers and the platforms that you want to look at and work with. And you'll see Nutanix is in the list here for the systems as well. And I've kind of pre-done some of that with some different systems. So one of the next challenges is going to be how do we get data into that Nutanix environment? And what kind of data do we want to move there as well? So once we've identified those systems and we've enabled them for analysis, we can go over to Plan. And inside Plan, we'll start to show the shares that are out there. And we can even go and select specific shares. For example, I want to look at all these shares that aren't Nutanix and take a look at the information on them. And maybe get a summary view is what I'm doing right here. So we know that's about 1.8 petabytes of data that's out there with 22 million files. And we can see how much data is hot and cold and how much capacity there is so that we know how to size that Nutanix system and file system that we're going to put data onto. We can drill in a little farther and look at, you know, top space, top file types, top users, top directories for the environment, top owners, and have an even deeper conversation about where this data is, where it's coming from, how long it should be there, and that sort of information too. So the really cool thing about the screen is you've got three great knobs to kind of look at your data, three ways to kind of control the visibility. One is you can look at it by various date ranges by changing these buckets down here. Like, for example, you want to look at stuff that's older than 7 years. We can edit and set these buckets up as you require. Another is, as you just saw, I can look across the whole environment with all the shares that I've identified, or I can look at just shares in my plan, which is I'll talk about here on the left in just a minute, or we can look to specific shares, which you just saw me do. And then another part is you can kind of do some price comparisons. What's the comparisons of all the older legacy storage they got sitting out there, and what's it costing to keep them on that storage? You know, the physical cost per terabyte for that, whether it's physical or raw or effective capacity, what they might be doing for backups for that. And then if we are going to tier off to the cloud or something like that, we can put in some of those storage numbers too. So right up front, we can figure out what data we want to move, the cost of moving that data, the savings that we would see with that being generated for that, and then information is reflected in our little charts and graphs down below here as well. And then be able to now decide what data we want to move. So we can come over here into metrics and look at some of the data, some of the types of information that's there, see shortcuts, see long files, see directories where we maybe didn't have access to. As we identify various error conditions, we'll start giving you reports and information about that to take a look at before you begin a migration. And then we want to get data to the Nutanix environment. So that's pretty easy as well. So we just come on over to our migration environment, and it's as simple as just coming along and doing add migration, select a share that we want to take a look at, like NetApp branch 1 with sales here, and then we'll go and we'll select our Nutanix that we want to send it to with our little sales directory that we've created here. And Nutanix has, you know, kind of an interesting file system they've got on there. It's a DFS environment. So, you know, we do give you a warning about the root share. That part of it won't be migrated over. That's just kind of a nature of the Nutanix file system and stuff. But everything from there on out. So just make sure the files are, you know, in the directories beyond the root directory itself. So we give that little heads up and that little warning so you're not caught off surprise. And then we can give this, you know, a particular migration name. So I'll just call it Randy for the moment. We'll do Randy's migration here. Set, do we want to move ACLs and permissions and times and keep that in place? And then a big summary screen, and then we can start the migration itself. So here's where you see we're able to take data off of like an Isilon, a NetApp, a Windows server, or a Linux server, and start moving it into the Nutanix environment. And we didn't have to bring end users down or anything like that. We do it in kind of an iterative process. Here's one that was completed earlier. So, you know, we did our first iteration and we transferred all the data. Now, in my little environment, all the data is transferred every time, but eventually we came down to doing the last transfer and getting the data moved into that environment for them. And so we have lots of ways of reporting that information. We have a log that shows all the files that were transferred and moved. We do MD5 checksums to make sure all the data was written and read back properly and matches the source and whatnot. So here's we're providing a really simple way to be able to come in and transfer that information into the Nutanix environment and get it set up. So as you can see, we can manage multiple migration tasks from the one window. So again, it makes it pretty simple and easy to work with. So with the plan, we kind of figured out what we want to move. With the migrate, we can start getting data into the Nutanix environment. The next part is the Nutanix environment might start filling up with a lot of colder data. So we have that ability to take that Dell colder data now and move it off to, say, the cloud somewhere like AWS or Azure or any number of platforms that are out there. And so with that, what we can do is now come along, identify the share that we want to work with. So in this one here, I've identified that I want to take the corporate marketing share. And then I've said I want to take data that's older than a year. So, you know, I can come through and do some adjusting. I can say, you know, older than a year, or let's go to look at our specific share with the Nutanix corporate marketing. So let me turn these others off and we'll take a look at the results here. So I can take the data that, oops, cancel. It's older, I can't slide it at the moment, but we can adjust this and see what the impact would be to the capacity amounts that are out there. Since it's an active plan, it's running in the background, I can't make adjustments at the moment. But you see, once we identify data older than a year, about 50% of the data that we see on that particular share for that particular environment is data that no one's been accessing in quite a while. So that might be data that we could turn into shortcuts on Nutanix. So end users still have that access that Randy was talking about. And Nutanix is still focused on all the hot and warm data that customers may be accessing at the time. But we can start storing that in AWS. And maybe we're doing some development work in Azure to maybe translate some of these applications over to the cloud or things like that. And they need new test data sets to test against. So here's where we could take that same data that's being modified recently and drop it off on Azure Blob on a regular beat. And we run this about once every 7 days by default, but you can turn it down to a couple of minutes up to a couple of weeks if you want. We'll give that control for that environment. But you see, here's where you can really start to identify your data, place your data around to where you need for the environment, help maintain the health and efficiency of that Nutanix environment. So load it up, keep it loaded with hot data that's of value to the company. And then you can go one step farther. You can go in and start to understand your data even deeper and even more. So with this, we do take some of that metadata and file system structure and import it into a data lake where you have these 11 different fields that you can run queries against to identify different systems. So now's where I can come in and say, let's look at corporate marketing and see what's on there. So let's look at that system. So we see there's about 871 files. And then we can say, let's look for all of the video that might have on that system and see how much there is. So there's about 1,000 files there. And then we can drill in and take a look and see where those thousands of files are, what the name is, who the owners are for them, or we can download it in a CSV to see the top 5,000 of them. We can even go and tag this data set with our little tag functionality. We can come up with our own tags and tag names. And then we can come back later and just do a search for that tag as well to pull that data back. So this way gives you a way to really understand your data and get in there with it and see who's generating it, where it comes from. You can view it in a lot of different ways as well. We can look at last modified and a number of charts and graphs down here that you can carve up in several different ways, and a number of choices to see the systems as well. So it gives you a great tool to really understand your data. And that's really kind of where Komprise really sits, is in the data management part. And then we have our dashboard here to kind of give you that overview of all of the data and environment and what's been working with our operations and how things have been happening for your environment as well. So Komprise gives you that good summary. So I think it's a great way to really help get data to that Nutanix environment, manage that Nutanix environment, and it all runs within that Nutanix environment. Randy, any thoughts or questions you want to add from there?
There was one question. It was as far as licensing, are we licensed by capacity or by functionality? And the answer to that is we license by capacity. All these use cases that you see that Steve's showing is part of a single SKU license, by the way, by capacity. So, yeah. Yeah,
and then we do offer this analysis and migration as an offering. And again, that is by capacity. And that's where you can, again, identify the systems you want to get data to Nutanix and do that migration and position it, or, place data in other locations. And then there's the full product that includes the archiving capabilities, that transparent archiving, leaving behind those symbolic links we talked about, or we can also do more archiving without leaving links behind. Sometimes some legal firms and others want to be able to save that data off to a safe location, but not leave it on the storage subsystem itself. So we can support that too, and that's in the products.
Yeah, that's a good point. Every once in a while, one of our customers says, "Hey, I want to archive the data. I don't want any breadcrumbs left behind, no symbolic links, nothing. Can you take that data and put it on a worm compliant ecosystem out in the cloud?" And the answer is absolutely yes, we can.
I'm going to turn it back over to you, buddy.
Okay, good. Thank you so much. That was wonderful. Just as a reminder, all of the use cases you saw, we do support Nutanix Files, NFS, and SMB for the use cases you see, whether it be data analytics all the way through to native data access, which is really, really cool because we are able to move files rather than just blocks. Those files, when they are put into a cold storage, if you will, or a data lake, if you will, you can still access those in their native format, either by mounting them, using an S3 browser, things like that. A lot of use cases there for Nutanix Files, Windows, and Unix data. Okay, we do have a question here, another one. Can Komprise Analyze to determine which data needs to be migrated to the cloud for tiering? Once in the cloud, can Nutanix access the data? I'll answer the first part of that question, and Steve, you can help grab the second part. So yes, Komprise can certainly analyze to determine which data needs to be migrated to the cloud. I'm not sure if you talk about migrated to the cloud for tiering or just tiering. I think you mean tiering. Tiering the data to the cloud. Yes, we can certainly do that by file type, by last access time, things like that. And then once we find those files, we will continue to prune that share and move those files into the cold storage cloud, whether it be an NFS target, a Windows target, an object store target. We can do all of those. And then once it's in the cloud, can Nutanix access the data? So the answer to that is yes, we will leave a symbolic link behind. Any user that clicks on that symbolic link, the file will be accessed just like it's a native access. Unless there's another twist to that question I don't understand. Let's see, there's a question.
I think you covered it correctly, Randy. We'll be able, with the transparent archiving, put it up there that a Nutanix end user can still have access to it with that. And then just a little preview of what's coming next is deep analytics with actions. So customers can really filter into what kind of data they want to put in the cloud and be able to control it even further by looking at one of those queries and being able to run the plan against those queries. So we're super excited about that. And that's a new item coming from us shortly.
Yeah. And by the way, folks, there's a lot of information that we have on our website at komprise.com/partners/Nutanix. There's blogs out there, there's white papers out there, there's solution briefs and things like that. So if you want to find out more, please go to that location, komprise.com/partners/Nutanix, or just search for Nutanix here and you'll find some even more information as well. So there's a couple different ways to do that. So well, that'll wrap it up for today. Thank you so much, Steve, and thank you everybody for joining. We'll see you on our next TechKrunch series where we tackle those challenging technical questions and make it simple. Thank you, Steve.
Have a great day.
Have a great day, everybody.